Nockwood archetypes are a set of behavioral archetypes created to help brands manage their actions and behaviors. I'd been working a lot with clients, and one of the biggest challenges they were having was trying to help their brands act and behave. Most of their thinking about a brand had been about perception and imagery. Agencies were so focused on advertising, they were just trying to manage image and perception. This frustration came mainly from the brands themselves, where they were trying to manage the behavior of an organization, but their brand agencies weren't helping them. What I found clients really needed was a language that could help them and get people to act and behave in a particular way. And that's when I started creating and investigating what are the different forms of behavior, what different behaviors exist out there, and what are the choices that we have in terms of how we behave, either as an individual or as an organization. And I decided I'd dig back in history and try and find all the different ways of categorizing behavior that the human race had come up with and try and pull them all together and make some conclusions. I went back to ancient Greece, to Hippocrates, Aristotle, who all had ideas for what caused people to behave in particular ways. I looked at psychology, the California Psychology Institute, Alder, Freud, Jung, looking at how they categorized it. Behavioral frameworks like Myers-Briggs, Holland types, all of those had been done to try and help guide people either in their careers or in their psychological motivation. And I also looked at brain science, or the latest things at different parts of the brain that affect different types of behavior. What I found was a pattern. There were 6 core motivations for human behavior. And those 6 things were, there was an inner driven, that was hearts, power driven, coins or suns, discovery driven, diamonds, shields, which is about safety and protection and order, flags, which is social, so being socially driven, and spades, which is practical logic and knowledge driven. Those seem to be areas where all of the different sources agreed that were primary drivers of behavior. After identifying those 6 different dimensions, I created a set of archetypes with 36 different archetypes. Every primary motivation paired with a secondary motivation to create. So 6 times 6 equals 36. So there's 36 different cards, each as a combination. So having one thing as a primary and one thing as a secondary. After I created the archetypes, I started using them with clients, and I found them really helpful for sort of helping to direct conversations. But what I found I wanted to do was actually sort them and manage them. And that's when I decided, right, these would be really helpful if they were made into a deck of cards. That was when I really started working with Graham Wood to actually create a very unique set of images and identities for each of the individual cards. And that's where his genius came in, and he started making the beautiful cards that he's made. When I was creating the cards, I decided I wanted this to be I wanted it to be symbolic rather than representational. When you look at a lot of the different archetypes that have been created, they normally try to represent a human in their archetype. I wanted the cards to be much more symbolic. I wanted them to represent ideas rather than representing people, because I was using them across a very wide spectrum of different types of organization. I also wanted them to feel original and new. I didn't want to have borrowed interest. These were a totally new set of archetypes, and I wanted them to be really distinctive and really graphic. We were trying to balance so many different dynamics. It was mind-boggling. We had colors, we had shapes, we had all sorts of different symbols on each of the different cards, and we were sort of moving them around to try and create this sort of complete set. And so we had all these concepts and ideas, and we had to try and push them all apart into 36. So I actually ended up with pieces of paper, 36 pieces of paper with the name, the symbols, and the descriptions of what they were, and we were sorting them around and moving them around and trying to give them names. And then we decided to give them all a sort of behavioral instruction, which was a way that each card had a sort of a call to action, something that if you got that card, it meant you should behave in a particular way. So it was quite interesting when I went into clients with a sort of rough deck and asked them to be my guinea pig and just say, can I use this new tool with you? And initially they were a little bit, what is this? Has William gone mad? is it? It's like, why am I looking at this deck of cards? But actually, as we used them, it was amazing how they suddenly opened up. They suddenly were pointing at different cards and talking about what each of them meant to them personally. And I started to seeing in that the potential that these could become a very powerful tool to help people have conversations that they weren't having. I remember there were some of the particular descriptions of the individual cards that were just so off in my initial guess as to what the archetype should be. So it was a process of working with clients and fine-tuning the words that we actually put on each of the cards so that they had a distinct understanding of what they meant, but they also weren't negative. I remember I used comedian in one of them, and a client sort of said to me, well, really, is there a brand out there that wants to be seen as a comedian? And that got changed to the provocateur. There was a client, it was a new brand, we'd used the cards to actually decide where the focus of the brand should be. And the client turned to me and said, I can't believe we've got to a very tangible, specific place in just half an hour of using the cards. And that was when I realized, oh my God, we got to a very focused answer really quickly. And that's when I realized that these cards could be really valuable. So originally when I started using the cards, I created it for brands to help them be better at how they behave as an organization. But as I've been using these for a few years, and as I've found this depth and these additional layers of meaning, what I realize is that it's less of something that I created and more like a discovery. And I mean by that it came out of an exploration, a discovery into stuff that had already existed. I found these dimensions, and then I've discovered all these other layers, these other dimensions of morality, of decision-making, of persuasion. And so it's like this sixth dimension had already existed. It's not like it's something that I created. I couldn't have created anything that was so complicated and interrelated. They were almost already interrelated. And then what that's made me realize is that there's great potential that as people use these and as I use these, there's probably much more to be discovered. My interest really started with brands and behaviors. And I'm sort of interested to see where people will take this. I'm interested to open it up. It's not like something that I created and I own. It's something that people can take and find extra depth and meaning from. There's probably many more meanings that could be ascribed to the six suits, and there's many more uses and applications that people might be able to get out of them.